Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have another deep dive video about a different sort of subject, girl defined. Before we get into it, be sure to click like and subscribe and follow the Hot Tea Twitter account, link in the description below. We post about tea over there and host polls for video topics, so come tell us what you want to see. I posted a poll on Twitter to see who should be our deep dive subject this week, and technically Keemstar won, but we are hearing so much about him lately, and I have a lot of other videos about him on the channel right now because he cuckoo bananas and he want to fight me. Plus, I got this reply saying to surprise you, so surprise! I'm going with second place. Thank you everyone who voted, and thank you Lizzie for your friendly and encouraging reply. So everyone grab your Bible or favorite religious text. This one by Little Miss Hot Mess is mine. And gather around, today we're going to be talking about girl defined. Most channels have been pretty quiet about them lately, and I wanted to give an update since, well, there are a lot of updates. My sources are mostly Reddit and YouTube, but I'll post some links in the description down below as well. Before I get into anything though, I do want to take a second and give an important disclaimer. I am not interested in judging, mocking, or shaming anyone's religious views. What's right for one person is not always right for another. For some, religion is a great part of life with a lot of meaning and joy, and that's great. You guys know I'm a little sarcastic and have a little dark sense of humor, but my heart is not hateful and I truly do not intend to offend anyone. That being said, I do agree with many others who have spoken out about Girl Defined, saying their messaging is extreme and more harmful than helpful. There are many Christians who have shared negative feelings and their disappointment or embarrassment because of Girl Defined's content. If you disagree with anything in this video, that is completely okay. Feel free to politely call me names in the comments down below. Just be nice to each other, okay kids? I really want to stress that my intention is not to offend, and if I need to be educated on something, please educate me. Love all. Now let's spill some tea. If you don't know, Girl Defined is an online ministry run by two 30-something sisters, Bethany and Kristen from Texas. They started their channel back in 2014 after their alleged modeling careers didn't quite pan out. It actually started off with 3 of the sisters, and they called their channel the Baird Sisters. I'm not sure when it changed or why the 3rd sister decided to hop off. They've been raised evangelical their whole lives, along with their other 6 siblings, who are all very much invested in spreading the holy word about Jesus and God and how we are tiny Barbies put on earth to please God and make him happy. That's my phrasing, by the way, not theirs. I know it can be hard to tell. Bethany and Kristen are the stars of the show, but other members of their family are often featured as well. They believe in saving kissing and hand-holding for marriage and dressing modestly, and they don't believe in science. There are already plenty of videos exposing them or mocking them. iNabber keeps everyone pretty well informed, so why talk about it again now? One of the biggest reasons I wanted to make this video is because 1, Dave shared something in 2020 that didn't get enough exposure, in my opinion, and 2, there was an episode of their podcast that was released that reminded me how harmful their message was and that they're not slowing down. And 3, in my research, I found lots of information that I didn't hear about in any of their other videos that I've watched about Girl Defined. So I'm going to address the most popular rumor associated with their channel, that Bethany's husband Dave is gay and twice attended conversion therapy. A few years ago, someone made a TikTok video saying something like, "Are we really not going to talk about how she made him go to a conversion camp twice?" while showing a video of Dave and Bethany. The internet really took this and ran with it, especially after finding a clip in one of their videos where Dave says,
"Defined straight." Oh, nice!
Now you can see us.
Along with this rumor is the commonly mentioned tidbit that says the 2 of them discussed this topic in their engagement video, but then later cut that section from YouTube. For years, we were left speculating while rumors ran rampant, but in September 2020, Dave sat down and addressed these rumors, saying there is no truth behind any of these statements.
So the story goes something like, I am actually not straight, I'm not heterosexual, I am gay. I've actually, according to the story, gone to conversion camp twice. To anybody who's heard that and has reached out in a very kind and compassionate way, I just want to thank you and say I really, really appreciate that. I just wanted to set the record straight that that whole story about me, being gay, going through conversion therapy, all that stuff is completely not true. Great news! I have not been through damaging, heart-wrenching conversion therapy or therapy of any kind. I've never seen a therapist for anything. I mean, it may happen down the road for different reasons. I call it crazy, but it's the internet, so the stories circulate and they're not all true, and this one's definitely not true. I've heard that we actually talked about my conversion camp experience there or my conversion therapy in that video, and then we removed it later or something like that. That didn't happen.
Admittedly, I was briefly disappointed that their story isn't as juicy, but this is his real life. So truthfully, I'm glad that he didn't go through that and is not being held captive in a life that he doesn't want, or at least not for the reason that people thought. The less people who are forced to go through that damaging, devastating, and evil process, like, the better. I actually have a lot of respect for Dave. He's always seemed like a decent guy outside the whole excessive worshiping thing. He's been really sweet to Bethany in their videos, and the two of them appear to be happy.
Whether or not I appreciate Bethany's red lipstick, I love it so much. You don't even know. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know how much. But beauty's on the inside, right, girls? And just listen to what she says. It's true. I listen to what she says. Oh God. But seriously, I really like this girl.
The more I can take my mind off of asking, like, okay, is this relationship with Dave's house, is he making me happy? And I think more about what can I do for him? How can I bless him? How can I encourage him? It changes it. And really, the idea of getting married, which is, like, to me, huge and such a big deal and, like, can almost be kind of scary at times, has really become a lot less scary and a lot less, like, massive, because it's, like, it's a huge decision, but it's about giving and it's about loving and serving. My life can be so happy, is everything going to be perfect? You always get to love me perfectly. It's like, and you freak yourself out and you're like, you know, at least that's how I feel.
It feels like the sun's always shining, even though it's not even trying to be.
This girl has the sweetest, kindest heart. It's just it's unbelievable to me. For me, she believes in me, and because of that, I can do me. And because of that, I can do anything, like anything. I can do anything, like anything. I can learn anything. I can grow anyway. There is no place I would rather be.
Well, we're having the best Valentine's together.
These are ideas on what it really takes to have a first year that sings. This is what we should have done our first year.
Hey, we did a lot of these.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
You're a lot better at these than I am.
Well, point number 5: enjoy time together. So, do you want to?
I love time with you.
And do you want to say a word?
I was just enjoying time, getting to know each other, like going on dates, and then you
I thought it was about figuring out whether or not you should be married intentionally. I don't mean to give you too many mixed messages here.
I believed the rumors when I first heard them, and it seems to be a pretty well-known rumor. There are a few other channels who did make updates after Dave's video, but it just doesn't look like the websites that posted about Girl Defined have made any clarifications. Anytime I mention Girl Defined, the response is that the one with the gay husband? So I'm hoping to clear this up for more people. These days, it's not as common to save oneself till marriage, but it happens, and again, to each their own. But one of the most unusual things that these sisters have done is to save their first kiss until marriage. Not only that, but they didn't even hold hands.
And guess what? We holding hands. For those of you who have been following our story, you know that this is a special moment.
They just spent hours and hours smiling at each other from afar. Just kidding, I don't know if that's true. Maybe they played patty cake or something. Honestly, not sure what qualifies as too intimate for these guys. Kristen once said that she and Zach slipped up a few times and weren't perfect, but they didn't kiss or get close to Pound Town. So I have no idea what they did to slip up. Maybe they made a pinky swear. Very intimate, that's a promise. Anyway, one of the most common arguments was that Dave must be gay because he was perfectly fine waiting to even kiss until they were married. Although, oddly, no one seemed to say this about Kristen's husband. Dave is not afraid to show his feminine side or express his feelings, and perhaps with that there's been what some would call flamboyancy, but it's just as dangerous to conclude that this behavior or vocal pitch indicates sexual orientation as many of the horrible sentiments passed on by the sisters, so let's just stop going there. Most of the people commenting on his video believe him, but there are still some people who don't buy his story. And maybe he is lying, but I have no reason to assume that he's lying, and I have no right to speculate on someone else's sexual identity, just as Kristen and Bethany have no right to condemn anyone for not being a straight white reject doll from the West World of Heaven. They have no right to condemn someone for not being a mechanical Stepford wife tending to her male master's every command. They have no right to condemn someone for not being a blonde model who fell out of a J. Crew catalog and into a yacht passing through Rhode Island. I don't know. Vote for your favorite in the comments down below. People always say that Dave and Bethany have no chemistry, which might be true, but I think they have way more chemistry than freaking Kristen and her man. Why does no one ever point that out? Zach has a fairly high pitch and gets passionately excited about stuff, but only Dave is called out. Like, look at the happy couple on their wedding day. I don't fully understand how they could be so reserved to not even hold hands till marriage, but then they post tons of pics of them kissing. They really looked at this and said, yep, Add it to the gram. People have pointed out that Bethany is reserved about things that are important, like whether or not her family is going to be vaccinated, but then constantly overshares when it comes to her sex life. Another rumor is that Bethany or Dave are settling for one another. Dave is 5.5 years younger than Bethany and shorter, and the relationship moved so quickly. Their story sounded like a fitting timeline rather than following a pair of hearts. Bethany's younger sister is much closer in age to Dave, and people think that they would have made more sense, but Bethany's family was too worried that Bethany was going to stay a single spinster forever since she was turning 30. Also, Bethany seems to post subtle hints on social media that she isn't attracted to Dave, but I'm not sure that she's intending to send a subliminal message. I know that's a lot of reason, and maybe there could be truth in all of this, but they might also just be a regular old married couple. It's all just still speculation here. These two vapid bobblehead sisters honestly fascinate me so much. I'm just so flabbergasted by the things they say, and I just can't wrap my mind around the way their brain works. First though, here are a few things I appreciate about their channel. One, they're not alone in their beliefs, and they seem to help people struggling with very human issues that most people who share these beliefs don't seem to address at all. Their videos discuss sexual urges, masturbation, porn, and homosexuality, and while I or the majority of people might not necessarily agree with what they have to say, I'm aware that they're incredibly helpful to some teens out there who feel like they have no one else to turn to and feel very alone, oppressed, and helpless to find answers. Girl Defined have endless resources and make themselves very available to their fans everywhere besides YouTube, where comments are always turned off. The second thing that I appreciate, and I could very well be wrong, but I don't think they have negative intentions, and other people have agreed. It at least seems as though they were raised to believe in what they are saying and are genuinely trying their best to help provide guidance to those who may be struggling. Of course, I can't say for sure, but I don't think they're intentionally being hateful. I actually think in their minds they're spreading love and creating a happy sisterhood. I don't want to go on too much about what I think, but I felt like this context might be helpful. That being said, their actions could kind of be compared to those of a cult leader, and they kind of have been. Just because someone thinks they're being nice or appears nice, it doesn't mean they are truly being nice. It's so confusing being a teenager, and sometimes looking for answers, we can find things that confuse us even more or lead us down to a not so great path. So let's talk about that. Bethany and Kristen don't believe in self-love, self-appreciation, or self-fulfillment. Everything they do is supposedly to please Jesus and God, and something about reflecting holiness I didn't quite understand.
Seduction is really just when we as Christian girls dress in a way, act in a way, pose in a way, post pictures in a way that are intentionally designed to draw people's eyes to us and to our bodies rather than using our bodies to reflect people off of us and to give God glory. In this video, we really hope you don't walk away feeling like we gave you a list of rules, because that's not our intention. Our goal in this video is to simply encourage you as a Christian girl in your walk with God to use your life, your photos, your outward appearance, everything you do to reflect the glory and purity of Christ.
As much as it's great for their fans to have a safe and informative place, it's so damaging to be in a so-called sisterhood that preaches that genders were created for a reason, women are meant to serve men and God, and if you see a trans person, to run away as fast as you can, or who believes that homosexuality is a choice that sinners make for themselves. Imagine being someone trying to find comfort and solace in these pretty sweet-natured, relatable Christian girls on the internet, just trying to get guidance and advice only to hear that their inner feelings are not okay. An Amazon review of one of their books says, "The book is very condescending. It's marketed as a book written by two wives/mothers to give a perspective of being a woman of Christ, but I suspect it was written for teens with no life experience. The ideas expressed in the book are very dangerous. These ideas are then backed up with, check our blog for more information. There is very little scripture to back up their dangerous details. I can't stress this enough, the beliefs in this book are everything wrong with Christianity. Save your money and stay away." A podcast was released on August 9th about same-sex relationships. Oh boy. I honestly don't know what kind of a trigger warning to put there, but if you'd be triggered by topics surrounding homosexuality, feminism, slavery, or transgenderism, I suggest skipping this part. The podcast guest, Rosaria Butterfield, has a very interesting history. She is a former lesbian who taught queer studies at Syracuse University and helped write the discrimination and inclusivity policy at the school in reference to equal treatment regardless of sexual orientation, and grew up in a house of skeptics. Her dad would drop her off at school as a kid and say,
"Be good with everything they're going to tell you and don't believe a word they say."
Butterfield describes her journey to faith starting with her graduate school years when she was active in the feminist scene. She says classic classical 18th century feminism that advocated for equal rights of men and women is great, but modern feminism, which she says redefines identity by feelings, feelings gross, is dangerous. She says that secular feminism is what made her a lesbian. She was a lesbian for years and lived with her partner in a house with a dog, but she was never really a lesbian.
And it was really through the front door of feminism that I became a lesbian. I found myself in college. I found myself in college often dating men, but falling in love with women. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And then by the time I got to graduate school, I just decided that I just need to stop messing around and just call myself a lesbian and get on with it. But part of how I had the vocabulary for that was through secular feminism.
She continues that secular feminism is centered around the idea that the future is female and there's no need for men and women are interchangeable and there's nothing special about being female other than being a fake victim. She said that the Me Too movement is just a bunch of women turning themselves into victims to build themselves up.
I would say right now it's rooted in almost all women constantly seeing themselves as victims. That is ridiculous. The old classical feminism was crafted to make women strong, not victims. And yet what I'm seeing today are women who find their voice in being a victim. That is so dangerous.
I'm just going to say very, very quickly, that's not what modern feminists are saying. And B, the women of Me Too aren't making themselves victims. They're abusers, and the experience of being abused is what made them victims. If they want to turn their pain into power and use it to make themselves stronger, that's not hurting anybody else. I understand that Dr. Butterface is a tenured professor, but last I checked, that doesn't give her the right to decide whether or not someone else's experience is valid enough to make them a victim. Okay, getting off my soapbox now. During the earlier part of her career, Dr. Butterfield wrote an article about how the Bible stinks, and a pastor sent her a letter with arguments to her statements. She met the pastor and his wife for dinner, and they defied her stereotypes of religious people and were incredibly gracious. She realized that she was telling people that the Bible is flawed even though she hadn't read it. So she started reading the Bible and hashing it out weekly with the pastor and his wife. Over 2 years, she read through the Bible 7 times. She wasn't reading it to discover what it had to say. She originally was reading it so she could dismantle it. But she started feeling like perhaps her life would be better if she believed what Christians believed. She said one thing that made her feel conflicted was that the Bible endorsed slavery. I'm going to play her statement about this because I have no words.
Bible endorses slavery. That was a big one. Well, what the Bible calls slavery was the ancient world's manifestation of what I called having graduate student assistants. It's like you do a lot of work for other people. They often get the credit for it. You get a footnote in their papers. And, in 7 years, you have a year of Jubilee if you've gotten your dissertation done.
I couldn't tell you how these words actually came out of her mouth, and the sisters just chuckled in response. But you heard it too, right? Something else she says is that she started to convert to a believer because she was petrified of the mortal danger she was in, but that she saw that as a good thing.
And so it didn't take long once I was able to frame it that the Holy Spirit convicted me that I was absolutely in mortal danger. And what really turned me around is the fear of God.
She compares it to a woman being on high alert when walking alone at night because the fear is making her hyper aware of her choices. A lot of people seem to use religion as a guide for a moral way to live and use their belief in God to hold themselves accountable, and that's okay. However, obeying a book or higher power because you're scared of being punished also sounds like being recruited into a cult. I feel like there's a fine line here. Dr. Butterfield also talks a lot about flesh, one of my least favorite words. Here's what she had to say to explain why sexual identity isn't real.
The real danger of identity politics is it roots truth in your ever-fleeting feelings. And I say this especially as women. I mean, come on, seriously. Are your feelings not different when you're premenstrual and postmenstrual and postmenopause? I'm not trying to be, condemning, but we're a hormonal mess most of the time. Your feelings cannot be trusted. The Bible was declaring loud and clear that there is no such thing as sexual orientation. My lesbianism, it's not who I am. It may be how I feel, but it's not who I am. And it struck me that my lesbianism was a case of mistaken identity.
She continues to say that if your church is telling you that it's okay to be gay, then your church is wishy-washy and you need to find a better one because their interpretation of the Bible is wrong. And only Dr. Butterfield and Girl Defined have properly interpreted the Bible.
I would say find a good church. Okay? You can't sit under wishy-washy preaching and find a foothold. You want to be in a church that gives you the pure gospel message. Run on my website. I have faithful churches. You might find one in your area. Run to one of those. Get out of a weak church. That's the first thing.
She talks about all the lives she fucked up and how much she hurt people, but she seems confident in her choice and it made her happy, so more power to her. I just wish they could have added an explanation that it's not the same for everyone, and that's okay too. If you like the church that's all inclusive, you can stay. If what is being preached makes you happy and you agree with the mindset, she shouldn't make people feel like they're doing Christianity wrong. It's not up to her. There's a blog post on Girl Define's website that says if the feminist movement is successful, the devil wins and God's word will be compromised. They say our greatest enemy, Satan, would love nothing more than to destroy our witness as Christian women. Why? Because if he can get us to ditch God's design for womanhood, he knows that God will be mocked. God will be laughed at. Families will fall apart. Marriages will crumble. Morals will vanish. Promiscuity will reign. God will be rejected. The world will catch fire, the sky will explode, the universe will be bullied. Here's some other great pulls from that blog post. Modern feminism is a direct attack on God's design for womanhood. Here's an eye-opening statement from the Declaration of Feminism dating back to 1971. The end of the institution of marriage is necessary for the liberation of women. Therefore, it is important for us to encourage women to leave their husbands and not live individually with men. All of history must be rewritten in terms of oppression of women. We must go back to ancient female religions like witchcraft. And you've probably heard of
Gloria Steinem.
She's the famous feminist leader who once said, by the year 2000, we will, I hope, raise our children to believe in human potential, not God. As Christian women, it's high time we stop trying to defend feminism and understood it for what it truly is, a direct attack on God's design for womanhood. The mantra of feminism is this: my womanhood, my way. Our mantra should be God's womanhood, his way. I can't wait until I'm done making this video so I can get back to my witchcraft, hating God, eliminating men, and having steamy makeout sessions with Satan. At the end of the podcast, they discuss some really toxic, misogynistic stereotypes of women and how we have too many feelings, which is not a new thing. It's very alarming to see women perpetuating these stereotypes. Usually people who share these views are old men in power and Keemstar. I also listened to a podcast about how sexual orientation and sexual identity don't exist, and the second pandemic happening now is the transgender movement. A quick summary of that one is that if you're not Christian, you don't know better than to believe you might be transgender because you're incapable of seeing beyond your feelings or having hope for change. There is apparently no way for your soul or spirit to have a different gender than the body that God gave you. Kristen was very unhappy when it was confirmed that LeFou was gay in the new Beauty and the Beast prequel, giving Girl Defined a new catchphrase: Disney does not fear God. There's a podcast with the author of You're Not Enough and That's Okay, where they discuss how it's bad to love yourself because you shouldn't be living for yourself. You should be living for God. Here's a well-written statement from Christian Gossip Girl on Tumblr. Self-esteem is not optional to life as a functional human. It doesn't mean egoism or selfishness. It is the fundamental sense of stability and personhood from which you operate in all you do. Kristen and Bethany actually have very high self-esteem in order to be faces of a very vocal public platform, which they can use to dismiss its importance to girls, many in vulnerable states of mind or stages in adolescence. But they promote self-respect through modesty and standing up for convictions. That takes self-esteem, babes. What they're proposing here is full self-abnegation. Be so obsessed with serving God that your sense of self never even occurs to you. Apart from Christ, you don't have anything to be proud of. Christ is the only good in you. Yikes. Here's the deal. God can be the most important thing in your life, and that is still a relational process. God does not eclipse you. You still exist as a self with your own distinct attributes, and you need the ability to trust your own interpretation and judgment and to operate from a place of confidence no matter what your source is. Ignorance on this subject is deeply offensive and unacceptable to me. It's just so unjust how they can propagate deeply subversive psychological damage while remaining blissfully confident they're doing the right thing. This is part of a much longer post and a great read. Link will be in the description for that. Mickey Atkins on YouTube also has a great video responding to this on her channel called Therapist Reacts to Girl Defined. I highly recommend a watch, but I will include a few short clips. And I just really want to show you guys the whole video because it's so hard to choose my favorite part. I really encourage you to check out the full video if you are struggling in some way with mental health or life in general. I very much encourage you to visit her channel instead of Girl Defined.
Hatefully
hatefully towards an entire group of people. So the idea that they are living their life from a biblical perspective is a farce, because these people who are running their own female-led ministries, which in the Bible is condemned and not allowed. So no, like, you're not actually living from a biblical perspective. And so, like, how then can we justify allowing these people who, from their own religious background, shouldn't be allowed to have a platform or have a voice, and yet they're speaking down to and speaking hatefully towards an entire group of people? And the Bible is supposed to be like that. Self-love is not toxic, and you're trying to teach them to reject themselves and to not explore their individuality. That's problematic, because regardless of what you believe from a religious point of view, the facts are clear that in order for us to feel comfortable and okay in our lifetime, we have to develop some kind of sense of self. This is inherently human. We can't operate under the pretense that we are only a number in an army for God. That's not fulfilling for human beings. That makes no sense, which is the opposite of everything that we should be telling people with mental illness. Spreading this culture of shame around the idea of mental illness, because they're presenting it in a way as if, well, if you just loved God more, if you just tried harder, if you weren't such a sinful little bitch, then you would be okay. And like, no, that's not how it works. They talk about how they should form their identity based on what God tells them, but then like the Bible regularly contradicts itself, and so much of the like biblical teachings in the Bible we don't abide by anymore. But these people don't consider their husbands their owners, so they're not living biblically. So how then do we justify this idea that self-denial is the right way and that that's God's way, except that you're not living by all of the other things that God technically says in the Bible? And that's not cool. That's not appropriate. This is how people end up in cults.
Oh my gosh, really quick, one more podcast I want to mention. Some lady named Ellen Mary Dykus came on the podcast to say that you shouldn't have singular girlfriends, but friend groups, because if two girls hang out one-on-one, it's quite likely a sexual relationship will start from their friendship. There's clearly some information these podcast guests are just not getting. She also says that if you are away from your partner and you miss them, that means that you are putting them above the Lord and it's an unhealthy relationship. It's kind of funny how Girl Defined is always saying God first, men second, but like, look at the numbers of blog posts in each of the categories on this list. Yeah, 2 God, 300 boys. Alright, new subject. I found out they've been having yearly conferences in addition to sets of weekly online lectures for other Christians who don't want to kiss until their wedding day. They got really close to holding the 2020 conference, even though everyone was like, hi, we're in a pandemic, but they didn't really care. The city shut down the gathering at the last minute. The 2021 conference just happened last month. Girl-defined conferences seem to include lectures, coloring, dancing, singing, and rock, paper, scissors. Also, everyone gets laid. Get it? They would hate that joke, and not just because it's a stupid joke. And then at the end, this girl hits a piñata for some reason. Mostly teenage girls and middle-aged women attend, plus this one old man in an incredible shirt that matches his co-attendee. Seriously, I want his shirt. I guess they have brainwashed or inspired a lot of people, and even though everything they preach is questionable, these people seem to be enjoying themselves. I noticed that both of these girls were layering dresses over t-shirts and didn't think much of it other than, oh, is that trend picking up? But then I saw Kristen's video about dressing modestly and it made more sense.
I think it's so adorable, but I would want a little bit more coverage just for me, right? And so what I do for these type of dresses is like a super light, really thin t-shirt. Like it's really thin, so very cool. And I will just put this underneath a dress like this. So I'm not like the layer, it's another layer, but it's a very thin tee. I went to the men's section and I found some men's running shorts that were running shorts, so they're like shorter. They're not like super long basketball shorts or something. And I just got the men's shorts. So here we go. I got a couple pairs of these. I love them. They're just frontal navy men's shorts. You know how they give you like the inside situation. I just cut that out because I'm a woman and they fit great. And they're perfect. And they're like a little bit longer than like women's shorts typically, but they're really comfortable and they're just easy and they give me enough like that I wanted. And so that's just an option.
So Bethany and Kristen love fashion, but the way they go about expressing their passion can be confusing, especially in regards to Bethany. She gives guidelines of how to dress modestly, then goes and does the opposite of what she tells others to do. Girl Declined on Tumblr took a bunch of quotes Bethany has said about dressing in a godly way and matched them with Bethany wearing the exact looks she says not to wear. She doesn't really give clear reasons when she gets called out on this, and if anything, she makes herself sound worse. Project Modesty is a movement by Girl Defined to make it easier for girls to dress more modestly in an age where people dress ungodly. In Chapter 8, they discuss guidelines for wearing shorts. In Step 1, they explain what to avoid, and on this list was shorteralls because they are a sexified version of overalls and show too much leg. So when Bethany started posting in shorteralls, someone asked her about it, and she responded, "The Bible doesn't offer us a list of rules or specific standards to follow. Our clothing and everything else we do should be rooted in a heart that is striving to honor the Lord and glorify Him in everything we do. Everyone will land in a different place when it comes to modesty, but our hearts' motives should all be the same." This response clarifies nothing for me other than she picks and chooses what she wants to follow from day to day. The Project Modesty book is uploaded as a free PDF online. It's the only place where I've seen any girl-defined modeling. Kristen and Bethany love to talk about how they used to be models, but I'm kind of a little skeptical. Maybe they were, but their stories don't make a lot of sense. And looking at the extremely unprofessional posing in these images, I find it very hard to believe they could have ever been signed with these poses. People called her out so much that she said she removed the PDF from their website, but it's still up. Still, Bethany herself is saying that their views can change, and that's a great thing. That's how we grow as people. That's how we know we're learning. This is one of the biggest problems with Girl Defined. Even if it's something small like clothes, they can change their minds. One can deduce that it's therefore not impossible for them to change their minds about something bigger. I honestly wonder if they're just too stubborn and prideful to allow themselves to open up the way others have when it comes to topics like homosexuality and womanhood, but they never state that things can change as you grow. They do sometimes mention that other people may have different views. Sometimes they say that's okay, but other times they're really judgmental. They believe that people who disagree are going to hell and need to change. At least that's what I interpret from this Instagram question. Someone says, "You think anybody who's not a Christian is going to hell?" She responds, "I think Jesus came for a reason. If everybody was going to spend eternity with him, why does the Bible emphasize repentance of sins and belief in Jesus?" Bethany does a lot of these Instagram Q&As and sticks her foot in her mouth. A lot. They also never stated that it's okay to change your mind or that you could potentially change your mind. They never say to reevaluate what your heart is telling you every so often, at least not at the time that they should. Obviously, they don't know what they'll change their minds about in the future and can't give a disclaimer for everything they'll feel different about someday, but they don't say it's okay if your heart starts to tell you something different. They really need to make it feel okay to disagree with them or to change your mind about something. Bethany explains that she's always emphasized that modesty is a matter of the heart, but the way that she and Kristen state what is in their hearts is stated so factually. They have fans who are mini Kristen and Bethany's, doing and wearing exactly as they are told. She also said, "I personally don't want to live under the weight of someone's conviction of dress to try and please others." She's picking and choosing what she wants to follow, stating it as fact and spreading it to a young and impressionable audience. Bethany also recognizes that it came across like she and Kristen were telling everyone the official right and wrong things to wear, and she said it was not their intention to be so final about it, so they know the way they speak is interpreted as an inflexible fact, but they haven't done anything to change that after all these years in the public eye. They continue speaking as though there is no wiggle room on what they said, and that there never will be, no matter how dismissive and condescending it comes across. This video was one of their first to go viral. It's a great example of their hypocrisy. In this video, they explain how to use biblical text to wear makeup while still honoring God, which sounds like looking for a loophole, no? They like when things are stated as black and white with simple directions to follow, and it can be hard to have to interpret what the Bible says to help explain what to do in a specific situation.
So most things in life, I want like black and white answers. I'm very black and white, and I want to know what's right, what's wrong. Just tell me what to do, and I'll follow it. And when it comes to makeup, I kind of wanted the same thing. Like wear this, wear you can wear lipstick, but no, I'm like, okay, great, I can do that. Just give me the guide, and I will follow it. And so when it comes to the area of makeup, what we have to do is we have to take what Scripture says about it, and then when we have to use that as wisdom to kind of guide us and to kind of make decisions using what the Bible says, not adding to it, but not taking away from it. Likewise, also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, but what is proper for women who profess godliness with good works.
At least one of them wears a braid in almost every video, including this one. So Kristen goes on to explain that this particular verse isn't meant to be taken literally and reflects the society of back when the Bible was written.
And so you might think, okay, wait, is this verse saying we can't wear like pearls or costly attire? Like, what does this mean? But when you dig into the context of this verse, and you get at the heart behind what is trying to be communicated in this passage, what we see is that this was being written actually and directing towards the Christian women of that day, back in the day, in their culture, in their context.
They said that prostitutes back in the day adorned themselves with gold and pearls and braids and other fancy clothing. I tried to fact check this, but I'm not 100% sure if this is accurate. I found a lot of biblical websites stating yes, this is how prostitutes dressed, but no historical websites without religious context saying the same. Those sources mostly just said that prostitutes probably wore purple togas. The most I can say is that it sounds like if prostitutes did dress in gold and pearls, they would have to be very high-end luxury broads. Comment down below if you're an expert on biblical era prostitute fashion. Regardless of accuracy, the sentiment they try to get at is not so much that you're forbidden to wear jewelry and braids, as the Bible expressly says, but that if you dress provocatively, you'd be looked down upon the way actors, gladiators, musicians, and prostitutes of ancient Rome were looked down upon for using their bodies to make money. Which is super interesting coming from two women who love to talk about the brief modeling careers they had.
Hey, God's women, Christian women should dress and act and look a way that represents holiness, that represents purity, that represents women who are set apart. Women who reflect God in a beautiful way, but do it in a way with purity and holiness and hearts of humility.
Kristen and Bethany said that individual interpretations of the text will vary, as will the opinions about makeup. But to them, it's okay to wear makeup as long as you wear it while honoring God and maintaining purity.
So when talking about makeup, we believe, and we've come to the conclusion that there are ways that we can enjoy makeup in a fun, God-honoring way that still portrays the purity and holiness. But because this is a wisdom issue, and the Bible doesn't have that tutorial in the back with exactly what we should or shouldn't do, we know that we may land on different pages or have different convictions in this area. We totally know that, and that's okay. Really, the heart should be a heart that wants to honor God. And through that, wherever you land, make sure that that's your heart. Think about the heart's motive. Don't get caught up on the should or shouldn't, but really focus on the heart of what we're trying to say. But the one thing that we do see in Scripture is that God created women to be beautiful. People love to enjoy the beauty that God gave to us. And with makeup, we kind of view it as like, well, we do live in a fallen world, and along with that, we get some really dark circles, we get some acne, some pimples. Is anyone still in our late 20s and now 30s pimples? What in the world? And so we view, just like deodorant, we use that to freshen up, or toothpaste to freshen that bread, and we kind of view makeup for us in that same sort of way. So if we have dark circles, we might cover them. And honestly, we will just enjoy makeup, enjoy enhancing the beauty that God has given us. So that's kind of our view on it.
I'm so confused on what that means. They said that everything beautiful is created by God and makeup helps accentuate God's artistry, not correct it. Although they also say they want to cover their under eye dark circles and pimples, which leaves me with a few questions, but okay, I guess. They also said makeup is fun, so they want to do it. Yay, fun girly time. I know I've been talking about modesty and fashion forever, and I know this video is super popular, but I wanted to mention this girl Defined is known for taking the Bible too literally most of the time. And yet, when it comes to cute stuff like clothes and makeup, then they're able to interpret the message behind the words in a less literal way. Interesting, because they usually say that no one has the right to say what God meant, but they like makeup, so I guess it's okay for them to decide what God meant here because it works out in their favor.
Like, okay, having sex before marriage.
Let me say something controversial yet brave, which we've really come to do on this channel. If you're saving the sex for marriage, the sex is not going to be lit, okay?
Not with braided hair and gold or pearls or...
Not with braided hair! These whores have 2 braids in their hair! Make it make sense. What's not clicking? What's not clicking? There is a thing where people take what they want from the Bible, and then they stick to the rules in some areas and then interpret in others. If you're going to wear braids, you can let gay people get married, bitch. I hate you. People who believe in God tend to take what they want from it and make it mean whatever. If you're out there and you're a young woman who believes in any form of higher power, I hope you spend your very limited time on this planet wearing exactly as much makeup as you want all the time.
Okay, so now for this section, I wanted to give a mention of suicide trigger warnings. So if you're sensitive to that, you can skip this section. This isn't going to be some like huge tea, but it's like one of the things they do that really upsets me and sticks with me, and it's kind of major in my opinion. There's another story that Girl Defined tells all the time. They've told it in videos, blog posts, their books, in live sessions with their disciples. They always started out the same way, introducing the main character as a young woman named Norma Jean Baker. It's always framed like this incredible secret, like plenty of people don't already know who that is or haven't heard them tell the same goddamn story 95 other times. If you don't know, Norma Jean Baker is Marilyn Monroe's birth name. They tell the story of how she had everything, fame, beauty, success, and she still committed the ultimate sin and killed herself because even with all that stuff, she wasn't happy because she didn't live for God. In their book, Girl Defined, they write, the more she searched for happiness, the longer her checklist became. If one thing didn't work, she tried something new. Beauty, fame, money, marriage, sex, drugs, popularity, you name it, she tried it. She's the epitome of a girl defined by her culture, and she suffered greatly as a result. Sorry, but this is confusing because what exactly changed their minds when their ideas of modesty changed? When your preference changed with age, did that not have to do with beauty? When your bodies changed after having babies and you wore clothes that fit differently to suit your shape, was that not related to beauty? Did you not start buying lingerie for sexy time after you got married and post about it all to your followers? Are you really telling me that fashion trends, in our culture had nothing to do with your style change? Because I feel like something must have influenced a change, right? They continue, if being drop dead gorgeous brings contentment, then why was Marilyn depressed? If having a successful career brings security, then why did Marilyn struggle regularly with insomnia? If wealth brings freedom, then why did Marilyn commit suicide? It's obvious that something wasn't working, something wasn't right. It all started the moment she allowed the culture to define her womanhood. The moment God designed for femininity was dismissed from her vocabulary. First of all, this is not your story to tell or sell over and over again. Obviously, the story is out there and people are able to talk about it, but they say it constantly in places where they collect profit every time, and they always frame it to make them sound as impressive and right as possible. More importantly, how dare you use the story of a depressed woman who was so miserable she committed suicide to push your own fucked up narrative and your own profit, especially because you don't even believe in mental health, and anyone struggling with these feelings aren't going to get the help they need after listening to you. That's horrible. They're talking like they can say for sure exactly what her troubles were and what caused them. Last I checked, they didn't even believe in psychiatrists. So where did they learn how to diagnose someone? You know, I first wrote about this just because I felt like it wasn't moral for them to be using her story in this way, and it wasn't until I reread this script before I asked myself, what was Marilyn's religion? Did she even dismiss God's design? I looked it up, and as it turns out, there's some piping hot tea on the subject. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, but it's going to come into a new context by the end of this video, and I'll link some articles in the description if you want to read more. Interestingly enough, Marilyn grew up with a Christian Scientist mother, and when she went to live with a foster family, they were devout Baptists. She is quoted as saying, "Nearly everybody I knew talked to me about God. They always warned me not to offend him." However, Marilyn rejected Christianity, but it wasn't like she was anti-God or anti-religion. See, Marilyn converted to Judaism before marrying Arthur Miller and remained a practicing Jew until she died. In fact, the home where she passed had a mezuzah in her doorway with a sacred Jewish writing, a prayer book from the Brooklyn Synagogue, and a bronze menorah. If you don't know, a mezuzah is a little scroll with sacred writings encased in a pretty metal fixture and attached at an angle to a door frame. It's meant to protect the home and remind you of your faith each time you pass through that doorway. The rabbi who worked with her during her conversion remembered her being really impressed by the rationalism of Judaism, specifically its ethical and prophetic ideals and its close family life. She lived and worked with many Jews. She supported businesses started by refugees who had fled the Nazis. Her public conversion to Judaism and active practice contributed to the feelings that Jews were gaining more acceptance and finding their place in America following World War II. Things revolving around Judaism were developing in many ways, but Marilyn's conversion was huge. When we look at Girl Defined's mother, it's not hard to see that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Her name is Heidi, and she also wears a lot of makeup and spreads the good word of the good Lord. As much as people don't like Bethany and Kristen, they really don't like Heidi. Many Redditors and bloggers refer to Heidi as Heitler. She is about as annoying and unaware as you'd expect, and does go around spreading the good Lord's word at inappropriate times and writes cringy books.
I appreciate it. Listen, before I go, Sally, I just want to leave you with something. First of all, I want to ask you if you can answer that. Are you going to heaven? One day, when you die, you're young, but I want to challenge you to ask yourself, where are you going to go when you die? And literally, this has the answer. And I know where I'm going to go when I die one day. I'm going to go to heaven. And it's not because of anything I've done. It's simply because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross. I know you're busy, but I'm going to challenge you to read this before you go to bed tonight. And ask yourself, do you know where you're going to go when you die? Okay, great.
The name Heitler still does seem over the top. I'm definitely not a fan of the nickname myself, but I see where it came from, and not just because of the video we just saw, which, if you're wondering, yes, most people agree that it looks staged, but might be a reenactment of something she actually does. Anyway, our last topic of the day will clarify this, and the last topic, it's a heavy one, so if it's not for you, click off right now. We have a second Girl Defined video coming out soon with some more craziness, so stay tuned for that if you're hopping off. As I said, this next bit is heavy, so I'm going to give some trigger warnings. I found a post in the subreddit Fundy Snark by user SoftSpock2 that has some insane stuff about Girl Defined's great-grandfather being a Nazi. Nearly all of the following information is directly from that subreddit thread. Pretty interesting, and makes you wonder about Girl Defined's distaste and disrespect towards Marilyn Monroe. That blew my mind a little and put a whole new perspective on the issues I already had with Girl Defined using that story. They make it sound like she had no faith at all, but she was just Jewish. I'm not sure how familiar Girl Defined's grandfather was with Marilyn Monroe, especially living in Austria, but according to YouGov, Marilyn Monroe is the 37th most popular all-time person and the 5th most popular all-time actress. I don't know. Just saying, it seems a little fishy, and I wonder how much hatred for Jews remains in that family. Bethany and Dave went to Austria for their honeymoon. On the first day in town, they posed alongside her great-grandfather's grave. Bethany said how glad she was to be visiting and that she's so happy the house is still in the family. Their great-grandfather's name was Johann Grosslurcher. In 1925, at age 29, he joined the Nazi Party, which was still illegal to join at the time. There are multiple arrest records from 1934, likely related relating to Nazi riots or even just being in the Nazi party. One particular arrest was due to affiliation with terrorists. Even if he wasn't present at a rally or hadn't done anything illegal, he was considered the spiritual lead to Saalfelden Nazis and therefore affiliated with terrorists. On March 12th of 1938, Austria was annexed by Germany, an event known as the, On March 12th, Austria was annexed by Germany, an event known as the Anschluss, I believe.
Anschluss.
The campaign against Jews began immediately following the Anschluss. And less than a week later, on March 18th of 1938, Grosslurcher was appointed mayor of Saalfelden, the town Bethany was visiting when she posted at his grave. He was appointed by a provincial governor who went on to join the SS later that same year. Saalfelden was very excited to be visited by Germany, and even hung a plaque that said, "Saalfelden does not need Jews." During the Aryanization of Saalfelden, good old great-granddad likely identified where Jews lived, which businesses were run by Jews, and almost certainly had a role in sending his townspeople to concentration camps. At the time, the church was run according to Nazi guidelines, and resistance could mean prison. On the screen is a detailed list of documented anti-Semitic acts committed in Saalfelden between 1938 to 1945 during the rule of Girl Defined's great-granddad. Yes, Girl Defined can't control the actions of their ancestors. However, they can control the way they speak about them. You can say a heck of a lot with silence, or worse, beating around the bush or twisting the narrative. And even worse than that, by continuing to follow the evil and outdated perspectives of the past. When Bethany took the trip to Austria, she wrote an Instagram saying, "With family that lived in Austria and were directly impacted by the war, I have a special interest in learning about what they went through." What they went through. That is not an okay spin of events. Previously, Bethany mentioned in a blog that her great-grandpa was arrested and taken as a prisoner of war, but neglected to mention that he was a Nazi and was getting arrested for Nazi activities. In a different blog post, she called out birth control advocate Margaret Sanger for promoting eugenics and weeding out groups of people. Meanwhile, her great-grandfather was literally a Nazi sending people to camps to die. Bethany can talk to me again about eugenics when she acknowledges the darker side of her family history. Also, the man didn't even die until 1994 when Bethany was 7. She probably knew him, and if not her parents did, I can't imagine she truly has no idea what he was involved in. And of course, she just deleted the comments instead of responding to them. Heidi, the mother of Girl Defined, posted that he would have loved his great-great-granddaughter if he got to meet her. Sorry to end the video on such a dark subject, but it also doesn't feel like I can continue. There will be another video coming out with more Girl Defined information, so keep an eye out for part 2. We will go over some sketchy budgeting information, Girl Defined's interactions with fellow Christian YouTubers, some blog posts, and lots of Bethany's bullshit. Here's a happy video to lighten the mood before you go because of that really crazy ending. Hi, Matt! Hi! Hi! Oh my god! Hi! And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked watching this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I post new videos every single week. Bye-bye.